You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 101. These difficulties in translating clearly shows up in the veteran's resume, in the veteran's cover letter, while in interviews. I know because I've conducted many and people struggle with this, and it's very apparent during the interview process. Email correspondence, whether it's email correspondence back and forth to a hiring manager or recruiter.
Welcome to Change Your POV Podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Change Your POV Podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary.
And I am Bennett Tanton.
And today we are going to talk about something we've kind of gotten away from talking about veteran topics, and we've been focused primarily on the different challenges that that Ben and I are going through with the 30-day and 60-day WellFit Challenge. And a lot of our episodes have been kind of centered around health and fitness as of late, as we go through these challenges. But tonight's episode, this is the attack episode, I am going to be talking about a topic that I put together to give a series of classes to a local university here in New Hampshire. And I got a lot of really great feedback from the veteran students that attended the 2-day class. And I want to basically boil that down the best I can and present it here to you on this podcast. Now, granted, when I gave the course, it was 2 days. There was a lot of hands-on activities, a lot of practical exercises, some case studies, a lot of visuals. Obviously, I can't provide those to you here on the podcast, but I've got a lot of really great information here, and it's not all-inclusive, but it is enough to get the juices flowing anyway. But at the end of the episode, I do have a very specific call to action that I would like to put out there to all my veteran brothers and sisters and solicit some help from you, and I'll explain that in a minute. But before we get too far down this road, I would like to say thanks to this week's sponsor, Mountain Up. Mountain Up. 10th Mountain Apparel is a military brand inspired by the power and lifestyle of the 10th Mountain Division all the way back from World War II to modern times. And you can find everything that Mountain Up sells. It's an apparel, a clothing and apparel and accessories store for currently serving military veterans, as well as there's a lot of law enforcement and other first responder and things like that for sale on this site as well. So you can head on over to changeyourpov.com/mountain up. And just to give you some sense for what they sell, they've got auto medals. Like I know, Bennett, you've got an auto medal for, I think you've got the Marine Corps Globe and Anchor, right?
I have, yeah, I've got the EGA, the Eagle Globe and Anchor, and the 10th Mountain patch, or the 10th Mountain Division emblem on the back of my car as well.
Yeah, and I saw that, and it's slick, man. It's nice. They sell clocks, military version clocks. They've got dog tags, hats, hoodies, knives, license plates, man cave stuff, mugs, shorts, signs, stickers, t-shirts, and of course, they're infamous. They're well known for their hats, and I think that's really how they got started, is creating these awesome hats. And if you've seen any Facebook videos of me as of late, I'm probably wearing my Mountain Up hat because I wear that thing everywhere. So yeah, man, check it out. Head on over to changeyourpov.com/mountain up. And at checkout, once you're there, loading up your cart full of all this great and wonderful stuff, use the promo code GOOD10, that's GOOD10, for 10% off your total purchase. All right, man. Let's get into this. So like I said, we're going to be talking about converting military experience into civilian terminology. Okay? So, first, I just got to tell you that many veterans struggle with and here are the areas that they struggle translating their military experience. They have a difficult time translating their experience in general. Whether you served a year or 20 years, you've gotten a lot of experience during your military time that you find difficult to translate into civilian terminology. Another area that's difficult to translate is trainings. Many folks out there have attended many different schools and trainings. Some are job specific, some are special trainings or training schools that you may have attended. Another one is skill sets. As you navigate your military time, whether you enlisted, a non-commissioned officer, or commissioned officer, you're going to develop different skill sets that are going to be centric to the military. And a lot of people find it difficult to translate those skill sets into civilian terminology. In accomplishments, and that can come in the form of awards, ribbons, accommodations, recommendations. There's a lot of different types of accomplishments that we get in the military that folks find difficult to translate. And then last is in counseling statements, fit reps, NCOERs or OERs, or whatever your branch calls them. It's basically the sit-down counseling that you get from your rater or senior rater, or however that is termed nowadays. But a lot of good information is captured in those. Let's just call them globally, we'll call them fit reps. But a lot of good information is captured in those fit reps that people find difficult to translate. All right, these struggles, these difficulties in translating clearly shows up in the veteran's resume, in the veteran's cover letter, while in interviews. I know because I've conducted many, and people struggle with this, and it's very apparent during the interview process. Email correspondence, whether it's email correspondence back and forth to a hiring manager or recruiter, or even folks that have been hired on the job and they're now working with civilians, their email correspondence is very difficult in a lot of cases to understand because they haven't quite figured out how to translate what they're trying to convey in written word. And then last is in just general conversations. There's a lot of people still stuck on acronyms to convey a message. A lot of times in the military, we're taught brevity, right? Say what you mean what you say. No need to elaborate. We're on a time schedule here. Let's move on, right? So a lot of people that have full military experience converse very short, very candidly. And some people may interpret that as being abrasive or standoffish in some ways. So they have a difficult time translating their verbal communication skills. All right. So how can you change it? If you're a veteran out there and this resonates with you, this sounds familiar, something you've perhaps dealt with, struggled with, maybe you've gotten better over the years, but you still find it difficult in some ways. What are some things that you can do to help change it? Well, first and foremost, you need education. And I'm not talking about education in the form of a college degree or an MBA or anything like that. What I mean by when I say education is you need to learn different skills, civilian skills that you perhaps don't have. And this comes from a lot of different sources. Like right now, you're listening to this podcast episode and you're listening to me talk over the next, 20 to 25 minutes. This is a form of education. You're becoming more knowledgeable of this particular topic area. And there's going to be some things in here you may be able to use and leverage to help you out. The next thing is self-awareness. This is probably one of the biggest ones in changing this struggle that you have with converting military experience into civilian language. Is self-awareness. You have to come to terms or come to grips with the fact that you actually have an issue with this. You've got to be aware of it. You've got to recognize it, and then you've got to take action in order to change it. The next is humility, because you often have to come from a place of humility, because in order to get better at anything that you're weak at, you have to ask for help, which means you have to recognize that there's a deficiency, and you've got to ask for help. Empathy. What do you mean? How do I need empathy to change this? Well, you have to put yourself in their shoes. Who's there? Well, it could be that hiring manager, that person that's interviewing you. It could be the human resources representative you're speaking with. It could be your coworker. It could be your boss. It could be any number of people in the civilian sector. You have to understand that it isn't that they don't want to get you. It's just that they don't get you, and they don't know how to get you. So it's really on you as the veteran to close that gap. And so you really have to have some empathy to understand kind of how they feel and where they're coming from. And you have to practice this. This is a perishable skill that you have to learn, and it takes time and it takes practice. And then coaching, right? Having somebody help coach you through it. That could be a mastermind group, perhaps, that you've been or you've joined, or maybe it's an accountability coach that you're working with. But it's got to be somebody that understands the struggle that you're having and has the ability to be candid with you, and you have to be open to that candidness. And they have to be able to be comfortable with telling you, hey, I heard you say this, or I read your email and it said that. Perhaps you should think about trying it from a different approach, or try this instead, right? And so one of the questions that I asked my class of veteran students when I gave this course, I asked for a show of hands, and the question was this: who is still in the military? And nobody raised their hand, because they were all veterans. They all served. There was some folks in the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, the Army, and there was even one Air Force. I think they were all represented. And nobody raised their hand. I didn't think they would. But the reason I asked that question, who is in the military, because I needed to preface the next question. And the next question is, okay, so if nobody's in the military, then who is a civilian? And I just asked the question. I kind of left it open-ended, and there was some glances around the room. There was a little bit of hesitation. One person immediately shot up their hand. The next person kind of slowly but eventually everybody kind of around the room ended up raising their hand, because in their mind, right, the first question, who was in the military, nobody answered, or nobody raised their hand. The next question, who was a civilian, it implied that if you're not in the military, then you must be a civilian. And in fact, I had everybody put their hands down, and I told them this, and I said, listen, you may no longer be in the military, but you will never, ever be a civilian again. That's the reason the term veteran was created, because you can go from being a civilian to being in the military, but you can't go from being a civilian into the military back to being a civilian again. Once you've crossed that threshold of being in the military, and once you get out, you are no longer a civilian. And you can try. I've tried personally and failed miserably, and I kept trying, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't figure this civilian thing out. And it was because I was trying to be a civilian, and you just can't. And once I said that, I actually had some feedback after the class, and one of the students said, I've been out of the service now for 12 years, and this is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that I will never be a civilian again, so don't try. And he goes, and it felt like this huge weight was lifted off of my shoulders, because I realized that I've been struggling with this for 12 years, and to finally have somebody actually say it it made it okay. And now I'm okay. And just by me saying that that's just the way it is, don't even try. Like, he stopped right then and there. He just stopped trying to be a civilian because he knew that he couldn't ever be a civilian again. And so that's the bridge we're trying to gap. I'm not suggesting that we're going to convert a military experience into civilian terminology because we are trying to be civilians again. That's not where this is going. The whole point of this, though, is we want people to value us as veterans, and we want to be able to convey the value that we bring to the table in a language that civilians understand. Not just understand and value, okay? It's one thing for civilians to understand what it is you're trying to say, but if they don't value your experience, then what's the point, right? All right. Like I said, there's a lot of information here. I'm going to go through it quick. All right, so and here's the truth. Here's the fact of the matter. You can take a military veteran and train him or her to become a successful businessman or businesswoman, but you cannot take a successful businessman or businesswoman and train them to be a veteran. All right? It's not a two-way street. It doesn't go both ways. It just doesn't. All right, and why do I bring that up? Well, I bring that up because it's important to understand that 0.45% of Americans have served in the military since 9/11. And so so you hear that percentage, 0.45. So what does that mean? Conversely, that means that 99.55% of Americans have not served in the military since 9/11. All right, you, the veteran, have the responsibility to help educate the civilian sector and bridge the gap. Do not expect the civilian sector to meet you where you are, because that is just impossible. You have the responsibility to translate your experience, your knowledge, your skill sets into language that the civilian sector can understand and find value in. So let's talk a little bit about what corporate civilian hiring managers are looking for, because typically this is where the veteran is going to meet their first resistance, and that's trying to get a job, right? So they're going to meet some resistance when writing a resume and a cover letter, and again, when they're in an interview. And so one of the biggest challenges that veterans have is understanding what are the corporate civilian hiring managers and recruiters looking for. And so the first thing that they're looking for unilaterally is the ability to communicate, both written and verbal. All right, ability to communicate. All right, can you convey a message, an intent, or an objective successfully? Can you lead a group discussion or a meeting? Can you represent through written and verbal word your department and or your company? Right? Can you represent them through written or audible word? Right? Because that's really what they're looking for, your ability to communicate. And you're like, yeah, I can communicate. I mean, I've given op orders. I've given, sand table briefings. I've briefed my commander. Hell, I was the commander, right? And so I used to work in a TOC, a Technical Operations Center. And if those of you have ever worked in a TOC, you'll understand how it works. So I was working at the brigade level TOC, and there was the brigade commander, full board colonel, and every day at a particular time every day he would have the each cell leadership stand up and give basically a sit rep of their particular cell. And so there was an FSC or fire support element cell. There was the the engineer cell. There was the ADA, or the Air Defense Artillery cell. There was the S2 cell, which is military intelligence. There was the S1 cell, right? So all these brigade level cells that would each get up and communicate to the brigade commander what their sit rep was, and there was a particular format that was followed, right? There was the basically checklist, a bulleted checklist that you would go down and you would communicate, your troop position there, your ammunition count, your food, your water, like all of that. Everybody gets it, right? And I'm talking, this is Army stuff, but if you were in the Marine Corps or the Air Force or the Coast Guard or the Navy, there's different similar things that I'm talking about here that you can probably think about. And so that's one of the things that we do very well in the military is we communicate well. Why? Because we have to. And so the hiring manager is looking for the same things. They're looking for your ability to communicate. However, communication is done by the listener, right? You can communicate all you want, but if the person you're communicating to doesn't understand what you're saying, whether they don't understand your written word or your spoken word, then that's going to become problematic for that hiring manager bringing you on board. What's the next thing? The ability to prioritize work assigned. All right. Again, unilateral. All hiring managers, regardless of industry or level of employment, these are just the basic standard things that all hiring managers are going to be looking for in a candidate. Ability to prioritize work assigned. Every day you will leave work undone. It's inevitable. All right. No one ever goes to work and completes all their work and then leaves for the day. Right? It just doesn't happen that way. Okay. Have you completed what you needed to complete? That's the question. You need to understand what priority work is versus someone else's demand for your time. And you need to understand what work, if not completed, will negatively impact your KPIs, which is your key performance indicators, or your goals and or your objectives. Okay? So all rolled up, that is your ability to prioritize work assigned. So you have to find a way to convey this to your hiring manager in an interview, or you need to be able to convey this in a written word, say in your resume. All right, next is your ability to execute tasks and projects. The ability to work independently and engage others to accomplish the task. Whatever it takes mindset with demonstrated examples. Next is results-driven demeanor with continuous improvement in mind. Okay, everyone's interested in the candidate having a very results-driven demeanor. However, if you don't also have a sense for continuous improvement in mind while you are achieving your results, then you may be missing the point. It may cost the company more money in order for you to execute that results-driven demeanor. Okay, so having continuous improvement initiatives, or at least that mindset in mind while you are being very driven, is very beneficial to the employer. Elevate and escalate as needed and when appropriate. Okay, so what does that mean? Elevate and escalate as needed and when appropriate, right? So there's a fine line between running into your boss's office every 10 minutes and expressing a concern for something. And then the other end of the spectrum is never elevating anything to your boss, and then all of a sudden realizing that, the boat's got a huge hole in it and we're taking on water and we're about to sink, right? So that all rolls up into your ability to execute tasks and projects. The next is your ability to work well with others. All right, and this means integrated teamwork with hands-off backups and pass-downs. All right, handoffs. What does that mean? So perhaps you work in a shift. You work on first shift, and second shift comes in and relieves you, or perhaps you're on second shift, and you've got to write some type of a handoff for first shift when they come back in the morning. All right, so your ability to work well with others comes in handoffs, backups, and pass-downs. It's also interdepartmental as well as cross-functional collaboration, right? So you've got to be able to work well not only with people within your department, but also people across multiple departments within your organization. Manage internal and external deliverables effectively, and constructive, not positive, 360-degree feedback. So what does that mean? Constructive, not necessarily positive. So you have to be able to convey candidly to people that you work well with 360-degree feedback. All right, what is somebody doing well? What is something that somebody's doing that perhaps could be done better, or ways that they can improve? But you also have to be able to receive those criticisms as well. Finally, all hiring managers must All right, now you got to kind of close your eyes and imagine this for a minute. All hiring managers must see you in that desk, at that workstation, talking to those customers, working with the rest of his or her team, because if that hiring manager cannot see you in those roles, no matter how good you may be, you will never receive a job offer. Okay, so I just went through all of the unilateral things that all hiring managers are going to be looking for from you. The question is, how do you take all your military experience, skill sets, know-how, and translate it into something that not only resonates with the hiring manager in each of those areas, but that the hiring manager can also see value in. We're wrapping up here. We're running out of time. I hope this has been to some value to those listening to this. This goes into much greater details. There's a lot of hands-on stuff, like I said at the top of the show, that I go through to kind of help people understand how to recognize their value in their military experience and find creative ways to convey that message in the civilian sector. All right, so if you found this episode helpful or useful, share it with other veterans out there that you know may be struggling with this, okay? And then, like I said at the top of the show, there's a specific call to action that I would like you guys to do, all right? Head on over to changeyourpov.com/convert survey, okay? Again, that's changeyourpov.com/convert survey, all one word. And once you go there, there will be a survey that will pop up. And all I'm asking is one question. And the question that I'm asking, obviously I'm asking you to fill in your name and your email so I can get back in touch with you. But what I'm asking you is share with me questions that you have when it comes to converting military experience into civilian language. All right? What questions do you have? What things do you struggle with when converting? And the reason why I'm asking this in a survey format so people can fill it out and I can get the results and I can compile the results and I can start to work on some common themes that I get when I get these responses. Because what I'd like to do is perhaps come up with a follow-up podcast episode where I kind of address some of these common themes, common questions that people out there are having, and provide the most value to you, the listening audience, as I possibly can. So you'll be doing not only me a huge favor, but you will be contributing to the Veteran Collective by helping me help you. Does that make sense? So again, that link is at changeyourpov.com/convert survey. And I'll have the link to this in the show notes page of this episode as well. So you can just click on the link, fill out the survey. It gets emailed directly back to me, and then we'll go from there. So, Bennett, you've been pretty quiet. What did you think of this content?
No, I loved it. And that's why I just didn't want to get involved, because you know 10 times more about it than I do. I mean, other than me actually practicing what I've learned from you, what the fuck do I have to offer? Sorry about the F-bomb, folks, but
no, it's good. And I've spent a lot of time, because this isn't just,
I mean, you live, breathe this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, and I do to an extent, but I always, frankly, defer to you, period.
Yeah. And this comes from, more than a decade of experience working in corporate America, working in management positions, working as a hiring manager, doing these interviews, reviewing resumes, teaching students in universities. So I've gotten a lot of not only my own data points from my own experiences, but data points from others that I've spoken with, and quite frankly, a lot of the older interviews that you and I have done talking with veterans about their transition out of the military. And this is something that comes up quite a bit, actually, is the inability or ineffective ability to translate their military experience in this. And I'll be honest with you, something I struggled with big time when I got out. I was a combat arms MOS, and I got out of the military, and I'm like, oh, I've got all kinds of experience in schools and trainings and awards, and I felt very confident in my skin when I was in the military, but now I enter this weird, strange civilian sector, and I have no idea how any of that translates into something of any value. And pretty much everyone that I spoke to about it, they all just told me the same thing. Oh, you need to go into law enforcement, or you need to go, you know what I mean? And that's what I did.
Yeah, I gotta love how that's like the best advice people can give. Is like everybody wants to get out and be a cop, and trust me, you don't want to get out and be a cop anymore, folks.
No, and I was a corrections officer because that's what I thought.
Right.
I didn't know because I didn't know what my skill set and my experience equated to in the civilian world. I didn't know. And a lot of people are getting out. And here's the thing, right? I got out as a staff sergeant after 10 years, and I didn't know. I talked with my platoon sergeant that got out after 22 years as a sergeant first class. He didn't know. I'm talking to officers that are getting out of the military now that, just because they had a 4-year degree, a 4-year college degree before entering the military as a lieutenant, they're getting out and they're entering the same civilian job force that the rest of us are. Granted, they may have a degree, but they still struggle with the same things that we struggled with. And that is, how does my experience translate? And everybody struggles with this at some level.
I mean, I get phone calls from guys every day that are failing. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're just, and no one would ever think it would be them, right? Yeah. Especially as a veteran.
Yep.
No one would ever think that it would be them, but man,
yeah,
it just comes out of nowhere. Boom.
Yep.
Failing. And it's all these type of things are things that set you up for success.
That's right. Yep. So it doesn't matter what rank you are. You could be a senior non-commissioned officer. You could be an officer. You could be a warrant officer. It doesn't matter. When you take off that uniform and you enter the workforce, you are now entering a totally different environment, a totally different world. And
because regardless of what your rank is, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Don't know what you don't know. Absolutely right. And so that's what this is. My plan, all right, if I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag here a little bit. My plan is to put together, because I've already developed the 2-day training package that I am giving to students at veteran students at colleges and universities, with great success, I might add. What I would like to do is find a way to take some of the same content, maybe add some content and turn it into something that's consumable online for people to go to online and be able to learn a lot of the same stuff. So it took a lot of time and effort to put together this 2-day workshop for the student veterans, and it's going to take a lot of time to put together something for an online training course as well. That's why I'm soliciting the feedback, and I'm asking people to participate in this survey, because it's only going to help me create the best content I possibly can. Because it doesn't matter whether you got out of the military 10 years ago, yesterday, or 20 years ago. Like Bennett, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, and you could always get better at things you don't know. And perhaps you've been in the workforce for a while and you've been out of the military for a while, but if you don't know this stuff, then you just don't know it. And unfortunately, the civilians out there, they appreciate your service, but they don't know how to help you. They just don't. No. So it really takes a veteran that's been on both sides of the fence for a while, like me, to kind of help bridge the gap. And that's what I'm trying to do with this.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah, man. So I'm honestly asking every veteran out there, if you've got a question, I don't care how big, how small, how dumb you might think it is, because trust me, if you have that question, there's probably 1,000 veterans out there that have the same damn question. So please capture your questions that you have about converting military experience into civilian terminology in that survey. Again, at changeyourpov.com/convert survey. I would greatly appreciate any help that you can help with me and other veterans out there, so we can become the best that we can be. I mean, we were the best when we were in the military, right? I was the best. I know that you can't be a Marine recon without being the best.
I was way better than you.
Yeah, I know, right?
Except for I was on the Fat Boy program for half the time, so.
But we were the best at our job in the military, and it's only fitting, and it's only right, and it's only fair that we also have the opportunity to be the best in the civilian sector as well. Not as a civilian, but as a veteran, but be successful, right? And so that's it, man. Again, hopefully everybody got something out of it. You can find all of what we talked about, including the link to that survey that I'm really asking, pleading, I guess, begging, whatever, groveling, whatever. I'll stoop to whatever levels I have to solicit your help. So I really am truly, honestly asking for help. And this link will be out. I'm going to pitch it on social media, on Facebook and Twitter and everything out there, because I really, really want to get as much feedback as I possibly can from all of you great, wonderful people out there. So never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. Come be part of our community over at Change Your POV Squad. That's our Facebook group. And hey, folks, if you're uncomfortable with providing answers on a survey, if you want to head over to the Facebook page and just start leaving me some of the questions you have over there, then that's fine too, man. I'll take it any way I can get it, man. Yeah, I just appreciate everyone's help out there and your willingness to help other veterans. I appreciate it. So, all right, that's it, folks. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.